Welcome to Monday night, late night at Revolution Radio. Always a surprise. You never know who's going to be hosting it. I am hosting it tonight. My name is Bruce MacDonald. And in memoriam, let's take a moment and remember our good friend Olive Branch. Olive, who was a host here, passed away quite prematurely due to congenital heart problems, and one of the sweetest people we ever had at this radio station. So we'll just call it the Olive Branch tonight. Now, tonight we're going to talk about the world. We're going to talk about anything that comes to our mind. I don't know what's going to happen in this roundtable, but the one thing I can promise you is it's going to be interesting and engaging. I'm joined by Monty Dean, live from Melbourne, whom everybody knows. I'm joined by my friend Andrew Bartzis, and I'm joined by my friend John Edmonds. And whatever we want to talk about, guys, I prefer to laugh on these roundtables and have a few jokes, and I hope you all have a sense of humor because, I lived with headline comics. I cut deep. Comedy's a contact sport. I don't want any hard feelings. I don't want any contracts put on me at the end of the round table. It is what it is. So with that said, Monty, why don't you take the ball and just say hello and tell us what's on your mind.
Hello from the future. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon here in Melbourne, Victoria. And yeah, the world's going nuts, and I'm not part of it, which is I'm here to observe the nuttiness, which is fascinating. It's all part of my spiritual journey.
How is Melbourne not a part of it?
Well, I don't engage with it. I don't leave the house. Oh, wait, no, I tell a lie. I walk to the letterbox. So that's my engagement with going outside.
They get you digitally, though. It comes in on the phones. It comes in on the computers. It creeps into this earthbag house on the mountain. The world is everywhere now.
Oh, yeah, it's there. You can observe it, but the trick is not to engage it. And so if I do engage, I try and come from the creative source like comedy and stir shit up, basically. So that's my fun, where everyone's a little bit too serious. And one of the best lines I saw on the internet in the last week is it's really hard to be serious when everyone's parading around here. And that was on a Bashar, not the leader of Bashar, the entity group page, and so it got a laugh. So I like that, and especially the people I'm talking with, they'll go, I can relate to that.
John, how are things down there on Stardust Ranch in Buckeye, Arizona?
Well, we're just, same old, same old. I mean, everything's always weird. But it's, I'm starting to think that this whole reality situation is kind of like, it's like they say about vampires. If you don't invite them in, they can't really do anything to you. I'm starting to think that, maybe some of this stuff is the same way.
Yeah. We all have one thing in common. We've all either written or read the Galactic Historian, which no one else will be able to do for about another 28 days. So feel free to make obscure references to that book that will confound the listeners if you like. I certainly will. And Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful today, and I have a question I've been dying to ask John. Do the aliens that come around leave any trash? Like, their version of McDonald's wrappers?
No, but they do cause quite a bit of wreckage in their path. I just had a 75-inch Sony TV that had a knife and a fork stuck in the screen back on April 28th. I was eating dinner in front of the TV with Joyce, and all of a sudden this green mist thing came up behind me and smacked me in the back of the head, threw my dinner plate across the room, and literally impaled my TV with these two eating implements.
What were you watching?
So, I don't even remember. I was so flabbergasted by the whole thing happening because, up until that moment, nothing was happening. We were just sitting there, eating dinner, and everything was fine. And then out of the blue, just bam. And $3,000 later, here we are.
I was about to say they don't litter. Oh, they're not human, but they destroy my TV. Oh, they're human. It sounds like a human thing to do.
I just couldn't believe it.
May I tell a quick story, if you don't mind?
Of course.
Okay. While I was writing Stardust Ranch with John, It was right around the time we were talking heavily on Skype about Gestapo and the derailment of the Sunset Limited, the most serious passenger train derailment in American history. Still unsurpassed. I think it happened in '94. And the people who got blamed for it had been living on the ranch. But I guess it was a touchy subject or something. And the conversation was being listened to. And the next night, John got hit by a plasma beam, got rendered unconscious, and it fried all the electronics in the kitchen. And there were a couple new microwaves and a stove, and it was about $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 worth of equipment, John.
No, at least, yeah.
Okay, and I don't mean to make fun at your expense, but one of the funniest stories I ever heard was John explaining his trying to deal with the home insurance company to get this stuff replaced. They send a technician in and, sir, we think you sabotaged this. We've never seen anything like this before.
So it's not an act of God. Technically not, no.
Yeah. And then I got to thinking about all of the liability issues involved in living at Stardust Ranch there. Oh, Jesus, there goes another 54-inch plasma TV. There goes. Again, John, I don't mean to laugh at your expense, but if you can't laugh, you got to cry. So I have to choose one, right?
Yeah. Well, Bruce, I mean, when you think about it, November 10th of 2000, the ranch burned to the ground because of this sort of thing. And, we lost everything and we were homeless for 3 years. So, this has been going on that long.
I have absolutely no comedic comeback to that.
No, but I can see the insurance company going, yeah, Mr. Edmonds, you've written rogue grey aliens. What are they exactly? Are they Mexicans that have been in the caves for 3 years? I'm not sure.
Will they show up to testify?
Well, guys, what's insane is that I have people that come out here for warranty work. Because we were at one point we were finally smart enough to realize that we needed a home warranty, and fortunately, there's no such question on the exam for getting the insurance. Are you plagued by anything particularly paranormal or unnatural? So we've never had to say anything about that. But I get these guys that come out here to do the work, and when they realize that it's Stardust Ranch, they can't wait to come out, and then they want to ask a gazillion questions, and they're wondering if they're going to see something or something's going to happen while they're here. Some of them are scared to death, but some of them are just, they're like on the thrill ride of their life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the Southwest Bell, the guy that finally came out, and he entered his vehicle like he was in the Matrix, just slowly looking at everything and realized, oh, it's okay, and then saw you. And then went over.
I had no idea at the time. I thought I told him, I said, we don't have any pit bulls or anything. Don't worry, it's all good. And he just was looking, kind of green, the whole time he was here, until he realized that I wasn't gonna bite him and nothing was going to attack him.
So there's sorry, go ahead, Andrew. I heard you there.
So I just wanted to ask that little side question along with my, do they leave trash around? Part of an ongoing thing we've got going here is asking, do the aliens that you talk with eat ice cream? If so, what kind of ice cream do they like?
I couldn't answer that, not in a million years.
Rocket Pops.
That's an inside joke.
Okay.
Interesting enough, I think 60 Minutes has done a story on the UFO phenomenon, and it's popped up on Twitter where, they're just hyper drones. And like, okay, yeah, back in 1947. And so I don't know if by releasing enough information, they're going to turn, it's like a psyop, and they're going to turn it to, it's causing more division in that way, because people don't believe, and they need the TV to tell them what to believe.
Well, you think about it. I was actually, I wrote something on Facebook about this today, and that is that there's absolutely nothing that is going to be revealed by looking at all these individual situations, these various cases that they're going to, come out and say something about. Because all these cases, not only are they different, maybe they have a few similarities, but they don't help the individual or anybody else to come to a larger picture understanding of what's happening, why it's happening, or anything else. All it is just, this litany of little bits and pieces of information. They're like sound bites. Individually, they mean nothing.
that makes a compartment in a people's brains that's stuck as sound bites and nothing ever moving forward. Therefore, they're always putting their life on hold, waiting for it to happen when nothing actually is going to happen.
And that's the whole attention span. Oh, squirrel. That, where everything's pushed that way. And the weird thing is, it's not working 100%, because Joe Rogan's mentioned this, where people have, or even Bill Maher, but someone at that level, they've pointed out where Americans, but I would say humanity, they have a 30-second attention span, or they can listen to 3 hours of a podcast. And there's sort of no in between. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, it is. I think that's what made pinball so successful. It's so short. And all it is a bunch of lights and sounds, and people just stand there mesmerized for hours over it.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a bit of skill, though. I mean, the way you tap those buttons, there is a little.
You mean you lift the machine and don't tilt it, right?
No. There's double taps, there's triple taps, there's left, right, right, left. I did my fair share of pinball in about 1978. There was an arcade near my high school. So, I'd love to have a pinball machine in my house to this day. I mean, even with all the video games and everything, there's a unique allure to the pinball machine as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it's based on 3D gravity and all that type of stuff. So it's more physical than the video games.
Yeah, you've given this a good think, Monty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do that occasionally. That's me done. See you soon.
So, John, I want to ask a question that's more about exopolitics. In the years that you've been dealing with the various things that come and go, what are some of the positive ones and their version of politics that we could relate to?
Well, I think that, I was diagnosed in 2000 with MS. And it looked like my life was over. I mean, after the tests were done, all the MRIs and all the rest of it, basically the doctor said, get your affairs in order. In fact, the doctor that actually conducted the test asked me if he could see my driver's license. And then he took my driver's license and he wouldn't return it. He says, "You're done driving." And I was furious. I mean, I was just absolutely, ready to beat the snot out of him right there. And the whole thing behind this is the idea that if it had not been for an intervention directly from an ET, I wouldn't be here today. And in 1 hour and a half, 2 hour session, I went from being somebody that was having these horrible electric shocks 4 and 5 times a day to the point where I was having convulsions on the floor to I only had one episode after being treated, and that was over 20 years ago. So I would say that ETs are kind of like people. If you meet the right ones, you can have a wonderful experience. If you meet the wrong ones, it's a horrible situation.
Andrew, what actually happened there? Was it just basically putting John back into the right frequency and he healed himself, or obviously rewiring, or what can you share?
He's a fixed point in time, and if he leaves the timeline, things will dissipate that they don't want to dissipate.
Oh, nice.
Well, I can only tell you this, and that is that there was a glass ball that I was asked to hold in my lap, and when I looked down into it, it was like all of a sudden I was inside the ball looking out. And gradually I started experiencing, the only thing I can compare it to is the sensation of having like a warm shower with warm water coming down over my head and going down my extremities to my toes. And this went on for a period of about 15 minutes. And at the end of it, I felt much, much better. I was asked afterwards if I still had any pain. I said no. And I was told to go home and, if necessary, come back again in a week.
Yeah, that's called soul. That's called soul matter. Yeah, that's called soul matter reintegration. So the soul manifests the localized matter, and your localized matter had been affected by something externally, and they reintegrated your soul-based matter. It's a very common technology out there.
Well, it's very interesting because I went back to the hospital that did the MRI and asked them to perform another MRI. At first they said, "Why bother?" And I said, "Just please do it. I'll pay for it." They went ahead and performed the next MRI. And when I got that back a few days later, there was absolutely no example of what had caused them to diagnose me with the MS. And the doctor, he was flabbergasted. He just looked at me. He goes, "This isn't possible. How did you do this?" And I said, "Well, I'd tell you, but you wouldn't believe me." I said, "By the way, I need my driver's license back." And that was the end of it.
Yeah, you know a guy. He's from Arcturus, but I know a guy. Yeah,
I know a guy.
Well, I mean, to this day, this guy's a famous guy walking around. He's done these kind of things for many other people, and he's out there in the world community. I mean, he's asked me not to mention his name anymore because he got so many people that came to him and asked him for help, and he just said, I can't do it for everybody.
You got to let the universe let them find him. It's like, in a way, the way like for me, DMT or magic mushrooms, I don't try and do it every Thursday because I'll be much more messed up. But if the timeline, the higher self, and if someone comes over tomorrow, here, have these mushrooms, it's meant to be type thing. So right. It's like, this guy exists, but you don't say his name. So if someone needs to meet him and get the work done, it will happen because the universe unfolds that way.
Well, that's exactly right.
So that's an interesting topic, though. Aliens just walking among us, wearing our Armani suits or Nike track suits, and we'd never know that they're not us. How frequent is that, John and Andrew?
Bruce, here in Arizona, I believe because of Arizona's direct connect to ancient Egypt, and the fact that there are so many artifacts here, there are so many examples of civilization, ancient Egyptian civilization here. I just believe they're totally attracted to Arizona, and this place is full of them. I know Phoenix is full of them. I've met probably 7 or 8 different ETs since I've been here.
Have you gone to? Just a quick question, John. Have you been to Egypt at all?
No.
I've just got an image of you walking around going, this seems very familiar. And I mean, like, where you live now, not like a past life, but I'm wondering, I know Andrew's been to Egypt, but it's very similar, I get, sand. Because I haven't been there, I'm only going by photos. But it's, the energy would be roughly the same.
You know how the Outback is?
Yes, yeah.
It's not that different.
Yeah.
No, it's radically different.
Okay.
It's surrounded by a city that's full of trash and beggars and haunted as hell. And when you come to the dunes, there is nothing in the dunes. And I mean nothing in the dunes. Nothing at all. And then as you go further down the Nile feeds the local villages and stuff that are still covered in trash and dead donkeys. Like, literally. The trash is so everywhere, it's disgusting. And then you get to the temples, and there's these people that they're there to supposedly protect the temples, but the vast majority of them are former secret society members or who aren't making any money that are just trying to steal from the people. It's really a disgusting situation there. But Egypt still provides a whole bunch of positive triggers for people. There were places that I refused to go into because I knew what was waiting in there. Just something waiting for the 32 million people a year that freaking go there, and there's just stuff that's waiting. Example, the Egyptian Museum. I lasted a good 20 minutes in there before I'm out. And I was hosting 15 people on a 2-week Nile tour. Okay, I'm like, I can't do it. It's too dangerous. But that's the nature of Egypt. It's hell and heaven in the same street.
Okay. Well, I was actually trying to compare Arizona and Australia, the Outback. I wasn't comparing Egypt.
Okay.
Well, I can understand that. We've got the oldest civilization on the planet today with the First Nation. They don't like being called Aboriginals now. Apparently, they're First Nations. Originals, I like that one. And just some of the stuff I've heard that they still do because it's been passed down for tens of thousands of years. The custodians in the land, and I mean, after the bushfire season, it's like, maybe we should talk to the Aboriginals again. It's like, yeah, you think? Because they've been doing this for eons.
Well, it's something that I keep coming to the same realization, and that is that time is a human concept, and it's like if you remove time from the equation, and you just compare the information of various different past events, histories, etc., suddenly it's a lot easier to make sense out of an awful lot of things. I think people get waylaid by the idea of many centuries going by, because quite frankly, motivations, thought processes, the whole thing it's so similar. There's so many things that have happened again and again and again. Yeah. And it's like we need to boil it down a little bit and start looking at solutions that are going to bring this world together. And even if it doesn't come together, at least solutions that people can examine themselves and start understanding that there's a better way to do things than the way we've been doing and repeating them, century after century.
Yeah, Mark Twain has a great quote. History doesn't repeat; it rhymes. And there's like a time loop where you can brace yourself, Andrew. I got this from David Wilcock, that the U.S. empire seems to be following the Roman Empire in a parallel, and it's. If we're all kicking the can down the road, there seems to be. I think we're here to break the cycle, and it personally and family wise, and then you get to the whole consciousness on the planet, because we've been here too long, and I'm over it. So that's why we're having all these interesting times.
But we have to stop thinking in terms of the fact that these things just happen. They don't just happen. What's happening is that we are not taking a responsibility for creating a better path, and we're using excuses and we're pointing fingers over and over and over again and blaming it. It's not about blame. It's not about pointing fingers. It's about each one of us looking inside of ourselves, finding the best person we are, or at least trying to discover it, and then doing something about it. And as long as we attribute this to somebody else's fault and blaming, we're never going to get anywhere.
That's the nature of the global narrative. It wants you entangled and entrenched into their story and attached to their concepts, such as time. And you're talking about time. I call it the toxic Roman numeral time. And we have to learn how to detoxify from Roman numeral time. And part of that journey is self-mastery as the duality and a singularity who still has to use toxic Roman numeral time to pay your bills so that you have a roof over your head and you have food to put into your stomach. So on the path to discovering the greater you can confront your traumas, your dharmas, your karmas, and all those other things that are obstacles that the soul has set up. But on a greater journey, things are set up very negative in our particular system, and we have to learn to detach from the negative system and make our individual association with the creators of this world, which is the prime 100%. Source energy.
I agree. 100%.
So many of the off-world entities say the same thing, but how many more times do they got to say it before humanity gets it?
Humanity doesn't understand what it means. That's the problem.
Because it's an individual journey, and we've been hoodwinked to think it's a collective. We're all doing it together. We're all going to watch it on CNN.
Yeah, join hands and let's walk together. Well, it doesn't work that way.
Exactly. I've said that over and over again. The sovereign journey starts inside the self, disconnecting the attachments that keep you attached to the outer world.
Precisely.
What about the collective experiences soul, or the experiences soul incarnates here to have, like war, like debauchery, all the things that planet Earth is famous for? What happens when we take a leap forward? Do those souls go somewhere else to start the first part of their bipedal hominid journey?
I wouldn't call it a collective experience to begin with, and science has muddled us with these words from their age of reason that everything's this greater collective, unaware aspect. But in fact, individuals come here for individual experiences with other individual beings. Okay? And if there's a bunch of individuals sharing a common set of experience, that's not a collective. It's a diversified group. Because there's many people who aren't involved in the war.
Andrew, I'm clapping quietly in the background.
Okay. And we just have to understand the nature of our language and how easily we can confuse ourselves with our own language. What do they call it in a network, like in the dark web, when it's a diversified network, an uncentralized network? Karma is an uncentralized network. It's not a collective network.
Yeah.
It's a decentralized system.
It's part of this whole attempt to keep us completely in the dark and to prevent growth and prevent anybody from having insight.
Correct. Because anybody with insight will do what?
Change
spread the word.
And they're afraid of that as well.
Right.
Yeah, they want to control us, but they're also afraid of us because of the untapped power that we naturally have. How do you say it? It's like our birthright and inheritance, which logically is a loop, but I understand what you mean.
Birthright and legacy. Legacy is what we create now, so the future versions of ourselves and the future versions of humanity moving forward have something that they can look on and learn from.
Yeah, that sounds like evolving.
Yes, it is in its own way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to that earlier question, what are the aliens that could pass for human that you could pass in a big shopping mall and you wouldn't know? Is the Palladians? Are there any others, or is it just the Palladians?
No, there's quite a few of them.
In fact, I would even say thousands.
There's at least 70. There's at least 70 different races that are actively, here on Earth at any given time. And I'm sure there's many more than that, but I can only attest to about 70 of them.
Yeah, and I'd say there's thousands.
Okay.
Yeah, just the Hollow Earth alone has 10,000 different species in it.
There you go.
So
what's on the surface? I mean, giving you a percentage, I'd say maybe 5.5% of the surface population are off-world beings. But after a while, if they're living on the surface their whole life, are they really off-worlders?
I'm not even sure many of them even know.
So there's always a group that's planted on the surface as emergency agents. So they can be activated at any time. And what happens is they're living in their Hollow Earth their full life, but they have a duplicate form on the surface world running a life program that's feeding the Hollow Earth version how to live a human life. And if they need to go into that body, they transfer their conscious into it temporarily and take it over. And then that being is really aware that they were a Hollow Earth creation and they got beings teleporting in and out of them.
Interesting.
Oh, mysterious Earth, man. So why would off-worlders come here and just mingle among us for a year or two? Is that just interplanetary or interspecies sociology or anthropology, or like what's going on there?
I don't think it'll be a holiday.
Take the science out of it. It's sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
It's a holiday. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
For the majority of them, yeah.
I remember Andrew talking about how certain, I think it was the Arcturians, they love the concept of food and cake, and there's that, not addiction, it can turn into addiction, but I guess it's the 3D sensory experience of eating beautiful food.
They have a big commodities trade all throughout the big positive, trading commodities networks. What's Mom's chicken soup on Earth like versus an Arcturian, Dolma soup? Everybody's got their version of soup, or everybody's got their version of food. And when you can make it as a memory, and trade it as a memory, they create these restaurants where thousands of people go and they share food from all over the universe as a memory-based experience, because they take the memory on by going to these memory restaurants.
That just made that Stephen Wright joke even much more fantastic, where it's like, breakfast anytime. So I went in there and said, I'll have French toast from 1853.
There you go.
You can.
Because in 1883, guess what they used? They probably used a half a pound of butter to make that.
Pure butter.
Pure butter, yeah.
Andrew, you and John could spend like a Sunday morning with 2 or 3 sci-fi writers in a conference call and give them enough fodder for the rest of their literary career, I'm sure.
No doubt.
I mean, it's mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling. We want to stay free flow, or do you want me to just sort of cite a few things on the news and get everybody's take on them, or whatever you guys want to do? I don't want to direct the natural flow of this roundtable in any way.
Well, it'll be free flowing, but you can put up some signposts.
Okay, am I the only one on planet Earth who did not know Hamas has submarines?
I didn't know they had. Well, they're on the coast, so it's not a big shock, but it is at the same time.
Use ignorance, Monty. Ignorance.
What?
They're actually Quds from the Quds Force. And so the one that was sunk in that article that I sent you was actually an unmanned diving boat. So it's basically a remote-controlled underwater object. But the Lebanon Hamas group has diesel-electric submarines from the late 80s from France and from Germany. 2 of them, actually.
Okay. So the
you
story...
can look it up on Jane's military book, history of who's got what in militaries.
So yeah. There's a Hamas Navy. You don't see that in CNN.
Well, yeah, they're mostly gunboats.
Okay.
And the gunboats are shooting mortars and rockets at the oil rigs, which is the first time in history we're looking at naval warfare against oil rigs.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Kind of interesting indeed, actually. I find, anyways. Yeah, so they're going after the oil rigs, and how did the Israelis find them and bomb them underwater?
It was in port. It was in port in the import.
Okay.
They have their satellite things, which means that all the satellite data is coming directly to the United States Central Command.
Okay. I wanted to spend a minute on the energy market, because it fascinated me what Trump did with the domestic energy supply in his 4 years. And, I'm not going to put any value judgment on it. It's just to say it was a fascinating experience to witness what he did with that sector of the economy. And to realize, because it's not something that's always at the forefront of my mind, that America really does have these vast energy reserves, probably...
It's all shale.
Is it all shale?
Yeah, it's almost all shale. I mean, there's in the Western United States, there is just almost an incalculable amount of shale, and that shale has a huge quantity of oil in it. But Canada shares a bit of that, and I think that was one of the ways that he was so successful was that he appealed to Canada and said, "Hey, you know what? If we've got it, you've got it. Let's work together."
Until the Russians and the Saudis had their oil war during the beginning of COVID, and oil went to the negative, and now we're seeing all the people that invested into oil are jumping out of oil. Like, why has all the big companies are jumping out of Chevron right now? Because the majority of their big plans that would have taken place in this year, next year, and the year after, all the funding has been taken away from them because of COVID, and the price of oil did what? Change the futures and the plans of all the different oil explorations. Like right now, Peru has the largest potential oil find in history, meaning 4 times the size of what Saudi Arabia is. And Chile has just kicked out its old government and brought in a constitutional reform government. So Latin America is going to be a very tough situation.
Agreed.
Yeah. The oil in Peru, literally everybody knows it's there, but
nobody had any technology to get at it.
Exactly. Well, they had the technology to get at it.
Well, they didn't have the infrastructure.
They had the technology, not the infrastructure in the local community, as well as the fact they'd have to import all the workers, and Peru were going to be like, no, train our people.
Right.
You're not going to take all our jobs and all our money.
Not to mention what it's going to do to the environment.
Mm-hmm. Totally destroy it.
Yeah, you think from
I for one will be somebody that will be glad to see the age of oil pass.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, we've been, in modern history, even since the Industrial Revolution, our controllers of humanity are still getting it wrong.
Exactly.
Are they getting it wrong, or are they just giving us a story that works for them?
Oh, well, yeah. Is the system broken? No, the system's working totally fine. It's just not working for us.
Well, it's misdirected. See, that's the whole thing. I mean, it's not about what's really good. It's about what's profitable.
Yeah,
it's about what brings power. It's what allows control to be asserted in such a way that a tiny, tiny micro fraction of the world's population reaps 99% of the profits.
Yeah. Just want to say a brief hello to Noreen Helphand, who runs the show before us. Who has asked to come in, and I've brought her in. Now, this is not necessarily an open roundtable, so please do not flood me with calls, folks. It's been a while since I've spoken to Noreen, and quite frankly, we could use a little estrogen on this roundtable. How are you, Noreen?
Oh, thank you very much. Interesting topics. I'll just chime in. in a little while. I just wanted to hear the gist of, what was going on, but it's been really good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So let's keeping up with this energy thing, because Andrew and I did peel off a few articles to maybe touch base on, because we knew we were going to do this roundtable tonight. Chile just had an election, and they've apparently, to sum it up from my perspective, they've basically undid everything Kissinger did there in the 80s, that the hardcore leftists are back in power. Now, why is this important for an energy topic? Lithium, the emerging electric car market. Chile is it one of the biggest, Andrew, John, and Monty? I'm not sure. I know Bolivia has a huge deposit. Mexico.
Mexico has the largest untapped deposit of lithium in the Sierra Madre Mountains, but right now it's controlled by all of the cartels. So they're never going to mine that until they deal with the cartels. Therefore, Peru has the largest available lithium ores to be mined right now. Correct.
Okay.
Well, and as we know, cars and trucks are backed up everywhere because of the fact they can't get the chips. And they basically only have two choices, and that's either eliminate the need for the chips, go backwards in the technology, which would suit me just fine, or they're going to have to just continue to suck wind until they can get a new supply.
But sucking wind is part of the plan, because
it brings up the price.
It brings up the price, exactly, at a time where inflation is going to hit the roof, but at the same time, they're going to try to control all forms of inflation and not call it inflation.
Right.
The fundamentals of economics say what has happened in the last 10 years, we should be in a depression, but we're not.
Well, and something else, they talk about a shortage of chips, but they seem to have no problem with all the chips that go into TVs and go into everything else electronic. It seems to be only the chips that are going into automotive products.
Because they're redesigned yearly. That's why. And that's how they keep raising the price on vehicles. Which is its own thing the car companies do to maintain power, but also there's a research value into the chips that they're creating that deals with defense contracts, as well as supplying the off-world commodities market with lower grade technology, but still can help the build out of the 8,400 bases or 4,800 bases that are out there.
So, Monty, when you're staring down those Antifa thugs at your local bagel shop in Melbourne and you overhear their conversation and you say the free market just doesn't work, it's oppressive, just turn around, cold cock them all in the eyes and say, what effing free market? You haven't even tried free market yet. What are you talking about?
You have no idea what Pluto wants, do you? Nah. Yeah. And that's a planet. In my reality, Pluto is a planet. And as Andrew points out, there's another 59. I'm bad at maths.
There's over 66 planets in our solar system, including Earth.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to take. Is it 9 or 8? See, I'm lost in maths again. Anyway, the point's being made.
You're lost in conspiracy theory telling you it's 9, 11, 12, 3, 5.
But I do like Pluto's orbit. It's like, yeah, I'm going to do what I want. And it's completely different from it, mind you. So are all the 66 planets on the 3D and we're not showing them, or are they on different frequencies?
So first thing first, we can't see beyond our Oort cloud. It's impossible.
Okay. So
some of those planets are on another waveform that we can't perceive. And I would say it's only about 12 of those 66 planets are in a higher frequency zone. Several of them have a technological cloaking field around them. And then the rest of them are all within a 3D vision and sight if we could see past the Oort cloud.
Well, I just had a thought. Imagine going to elementary/primary school and, okay, everyone, we're going to build the solar system. Get your 66 ping pongs out. Huge.
Well, the ones that have a cloaking field around them, what it's really there is our binary star system has some issues with the way sun is light is projected. So the field that they do traps light inside the planetoid, and byproduct is it makes it invisible.
Yeah, so
and it wasn't an offensive defensive system. It was a way to trap light and keep the planet warm and having real light in it instead of having an artificial light planet.
So it's like, bear with me here, comedian, but it's like getting a greenhouse and tinting all the windows.
You could put it that way, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's not a scientific fact. I'm just being
metaphor.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question about that then. So we're using light as the frequency that is being offered as some form of detection, but in the frequency spectrum, light is a very narrow part of it.
This is the light that supports life, organic life.
Okay.
Specifically, plants that use the photosynthesis wavelength.
Okay.
And then there's specific DNA inside the plant life that aids consciousness growth, which allows varieties of soul families to incarnate in all sorts of bodies and spiritus.
Okay. That's acceptable to me.
Okay. And then there's the next level of light, which is the astral light. And the astral light is on a much higher frequency bandwidth. And it's where the fourth and fifth and sixth density dimensional beings will go and occupy a non-time frequency and begin planning long-term agendas of how to operate in the light living realms.
That's what I was getting to.
Yeah.
I still find it slightly amusing when people say there's an awakening, and it's like you're waking up to the corruption of the political system. Have you met my friend Andrew? Because you're awakening. You just realise you're lying in a bed. You haven't even got up and you've made your bed and you put your clothes on. There's so much more. You're
alive.
Yeah.
Now, artificial light worlds, they're tough to live on, and they're tough to grow long-term agenda life in it. So those worlds that have the reflective cloaking field around them, that field has been around for millions of years because there's some oddities in the way light flows in our binary system.
Okay.
And these oddities are temporal rifts that absorb light and send it forwards and backwards in time.
Well, and as well as being something that is a matter of intention.
Yes, intention also. But these rifts will steal light from our solar system on their side. We'll think of it like a figure eight. We're on our side, they're on their side, and the binary system's in it. It's constantly rotating within the figure eight.
Well, it's like the infinity symbol.
Yeah, that's like the infinity symbol. And there are certain parts, because of the time travel time travel wars that were so destructive, there are parts when the figure eight is spinning that light coming from the second binary sun is absorbed by these temporal rifts, and planets that using these shields, they use these shields because light is being absorbed in the rift, and they could go 2-3 centuries without any real light.
Wow.
And again, time is relative. I mean, I hate to say that, but in some of these places, it's an accepted just standard.
Right. See, the vast majority of other worlds measure time by eras of light.
Right.
The amount of light that's absorbed in the environment that you're working from
identifies it.
It's identified by the absorption of light. Like we would use carbon-14 dating. They use light dating.
Right.
Yeah. As well as the position in the galactic groove.
Relative to?
So the galactic central sun, which is relative to the universal central sun. Two different forms of scaled time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a friend of mine does events, and she basically doesn't like me when I'm in the room when she says this, because I sort of poo-poo. It's like, everything's an illusion except for time, and then I put my hand, well, time's an illusion. It's like, yeah, we'll get to that.
Time's the worst one.
Yeah, but I understand.
It's the illusion by which all others are formed.
Yes, yeah, and so I can understand you don't open with, by the way, time's an illusion, and it's like, well, but if you break it down, everything's an illusion except time, and then you get to that point, then you go, oh, and time's an illusion. It blows their mind, but there's like a buffer.
Actually, time is a delusion, not an illusion.
There you go. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Here are
And it's so hard to explain any of this to most people. I mean, they just kind
Family
of
members.
they have no frame of reference to be able to even comprehend what you're trying to express.
Even with like sci-fi, it's very hard to, because sci-fi is still, time is a foundation for most of time travel and everything else like that, and it's like very hard. I think Noreen wants to say a word.
Yeah, I have a question about, since the current situation here on Earth, right? We're going through like major changes we haven't seen, or humanity that we consciously know hasn't been through maybe thousands of years ago, or eons ago. So since you guys are talking about time and energy and elements that affect planets, or say our planet right now, how are we going through this because the entities or the energies are actually kind of putting veils around us that we can't see why this current situation is happening from like an energetic level? Are they like manipulating us to, like, in other words, if we were to go to a different spot or a different energy level, would we be able to see like exactly how they're doing this manipulation of the mind and everything that's going on right now?
You can see it now.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, you don't understand the greater agenda that's been planned thousands of years in prepared for this. So we're trying to understand fourth dimensional chess when we're still playing checkers.
Right.
And whatever's projected onto us, we have been contracted and we accept it as part of the spiritual incarnation process, as well as the karmic retribution process here. Just because you haven't received a letter in the mail, a certified letter in the mail that you agree to this, doesn't mean that the tacit consent still doesn't apply. And whatever the system of domination and control and the infrastructure of domination that's here, it's here, and it's in the sub-realms. But those sub-realms have an infrastructure of surface control. And we're trying to deal with the surface control through using techniques that were 200-300 years old, when they're using techniques tens of thousands of years old. So we have to up our personal responsibility, raise our consciousness and our frequency so we can see their fourth dimensional chess game and begin to stop it from taking effect in our daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, and decade lives, to have a bigger form of perception. One of the greatest things in spirituality that I tell people over and over again, your responsibility is equal to your level of awareness, and your level of awareness is equal to your responsibility. And all too often, conspiracy theory puts something into your awareness that you're not ready to be responsible for. And it's what overwhelms people and sends them into being zealots and martyrs, which they then lose their way.
Mm-hmm.
Well said,
Bravo.
Andrew.
Wow.
Wonderful explanation.
I like the term doom junkie.
Yes.
Well, I think of it as people are in a situation where they're being asked to, participate in a symphony, but most of them are extremely tone deaf, and they just don't have any clue as to where to begin. They get the idea, but beyond that, they're lost, and it's because they haven't been prepped. They don't have any frame of reference to work from, and so few people are capable of reaching into their own. Who they are from a spiritual point of view to be able to ask for help. I think what saved me all my life was the fact that I just said, God, I'm way in over my head here. Please help me. I'm lost. And lo and behold, I mean, he just reached in and restored me.
But you also had self-mastery of who you were, and knowing when to ask for help is vital in the journey. But also knowing when to not ask for help, and when I have got to go myself through my own litmus test. I am capable of beating this. I have the internal, the intestinal fortitude to get through this journey. And it's not out of vanity or ego that I'm not asking for help. It's out of their journey to make myself tougher.
Exactly. As that's so true, Andrew. I couldn't. It's amazing when I speak to you because you voice so many things that I'm aware of, but I've never spoken out loud.
This may be like a paid promotion, but if you read Stardust Ranch, you'll understand what John is referring to, because it's like just like when you were talking, like you asked for help. But also, when Andrew said you've got the fortitude, it's like, yeah, like you taught yourself to, wake up in an instant from touch or smell or, at that level and fighting the rogue greys.
You got to suck it up in order to get the skills.
Yeah.
Right. You have to have those suck it up buttercup moments.
Yep.
They got to put on the big boy panties.
That's it.
You can't walk around woe is me pity party.
Yeah,
No, it doesn't work.
And thank you, John, because I will not go through that, but I'm in a way glad you did, and you shared your story. So through the visual consent or however the stories work, I don't have to be part of the story, but I know the story. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah.
So Noreen, the greatest thing anybody can do right now at the Grand Awakening is to learn self-healing, self-nurturing, and self-mastery. Mm-hmm. Detach from the rest of the conspiracy world. Pay attention to it, but don't be attached to its outcomes.
Sure.
Learn how to observe it and have fun with it, but not be attached and waiting like bated breath for the next article to come out. Mm-hmm. Go out and live, love, and learn.
Comedy's
Make jokes.
Yeah, comedy's a good way of dealing with it.
Learn to play guitar. Join a singing group. Something. Go do salsa dancing.
Actually, I've made a point, despite what's going on, to enjoy myself. I mean, furthermore, I mean, I'm not too of course, we can't help but to think of the repercussions of what's going on, how it affects us personally, with this jab situation. I call it the jab. So, these are things that are physical that we have to deal with, right? Like, how are we going to work or eat if we don't go that direction that they want us to? Those are real,
Those are real things, yeah.
Yeah.
Tell the mortgage company you don't want to pay your bill, but you're going to send them love and light.
Yeah, it doesn't really work.
Oh, God,
Noreen, by you're finding your passion and living your life to the fullest, you're actually winning the war. And it's interesting.
Exactly.
It's interesting as well. Like, there's a spiritual war, and to win it, you don't be part of it, and you're in the sidelines. Like, all of us are sitting in the bleachers going, "This sucks." Like, I've seen wars before. This is terrible.
Yeah.
This whole delusion they set up for us, there's ways to manipulate the delusion for your advantage.
Go on.
Self-healing, self-nurturing, self-masters are the fundamentals of learning how to observe it as a grounded, internalized being who says, all right, system, that is this delusion, how can I use it to my advantage, and what is my strategy going forward? Because if you're unable to strategize long-term, beyond a business plan, beyond a concept, truly strategize what your life is about, then you're not going to be able to beat the system, because the system has a 1,000-year strategy.
Yeah, I have thought about that they've been planning this for long-term, that we're not consciously aware of. But yeah, I make it a point just to, live. It's a spiritual warfare. I mean, it's a spiritual battle out there. But internally, you have your own reality. And this is just like trying to put that into the daily life. And that's,
Whatever your daily practice turns out to be, just remember to get variety, variety, variety. If you're stuck in a mono practice, the system's going to look at you, go, you're a mono practicer. Okay, now what? You're easy to get beyond.
And everything can change with one thought. Since the last 3 days, I felt a bit off. I don't know if I went into a new hologram or it's just working internally or both.
The CMEs are about to hit. We've got a double whammy CME coming in.
But it felt like a pattern recognition. I realized, it's a downswing, and there's nothing wrong with that. But having that thought, there's a downswing, I started to feel the upswing. And it's my comedic... The clown a good clown came back. And it's just having that one thought, perspective change. That's what I find fascinating. I think Dr. Wayne Dyer said, your life is one thought away from being completely awesome. I'm paraphrasing, but yeah.
Nice.
I've always said, don't take it too seriously.
Well, yeah.
Try to stay detached and engaged at the same time. It's like a contradiction, but it is what it is.
I have to say this current situation has forced me to look at not just the physical, but definitely the spiritual. Because if anything, even despite all these problems, I'm more focused on, am I on the right path? That's one question I have, always. And then the other aspect would be what makes me feel happy, what makes me feel, fulfilled. So I'm always looking at that is kind of like an ideal situation amongst this weird paradigm, to be able to see, okay, this is an opportunity for me to look at this and how am I going to live it out, So it's actually part of my daily like thought pattern now. You know, how am I going to deal with this and yet grow at the same time? So it's challenging, but it's the way it is. You know?
Yeah, in one way. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, could the stenographer mute when they're taking transcripts, please?
Oops,
We're going
sorry.
to a break. We'll be right back after the break, folks. You're with Revolution Radio Studio A. And welcome back, ladies, gentlemen, and unaccompanied minors. We are having what I consider to be a 10 out of 10 fireside chat tonight. This is just absolutely fascinating. I'm joined by some of my favorite people in the world, except for Monty Dean. And it's not that he's not one of my favorite people. I just don't consider Australia part of the world, to be honest.
We exist, ladies and gentlemen. We exist. Now, if we're paid actors by NASA, I'm owed a check or two. Just putting it out there.
See, Monty, to me, you're more American than you are Australian.
Right on, dude.
See? There you go.
There you go. And in keeping with the free-flowing nature of this roundtable, I'll just open it up to anything we want to talk about. And let's start with Australia, because I made a disparaging joke about it. What to the incredibly insightful and learned people of this roundtable is interesting about Australia from a Revolution Radio standpoint? I would start with Pine Gap if anybody has a few details on that, but if there's anything else I don't know. And how did those native people in Australia learn so much about this world? So let's Pine Gap and natives. Anybody? All right.
So hold on. I'm making that noise for a reason, because they're two tough subjects. So, are there truly native people in this world? The answer is no. There's 72 first species because of time travel. Now, no matter what other people says, I'm a messenger, the messenger. You can believe it or not. It doesn't matter to me. I know my truth, and I'll stick to my truth, as I've done for many years of presentation. When time goes through alterations like we have here, and wars have been done to erase everybody else's attempt to being the first species, what's the byproduct is everyone's a first species. So are the native aboriginals native to this world? Sure. But if you look at their creationary stories, they came from the hollow earth, just as the vast majority of the other native peoples who took over the surface of the world as part of the original surface farm. Now, the aboriginals go back 100,000 years in their history, and there were people who were Atlanteans at that time. Atlantis was a global culture, but the global culture still had its version of preppers that went out into nature and left technology aside. And many of the aboriginal cultures, or the remaining cultures of Upper Java, Sumatra, Australia, when the oceans were much lower than they are today, were the metaphorical preppers that were understanding that Atlantis was going down as a global and galactic culture.
Yeah, I think also the placement of Australia being the island continent, it is, our Prime Minister in the 90s, we're the arse end of nowhere. It's like, well, thanks for that, but he's kind of correct. We're the furthest bit. We're near the edge type thing. And so there's an element, like you can see that through the ecosystem, where, the kangaroo, definitely the platypus, just most of our animals are, because of being landlocked when the seas rose, and then everything changed from that. So I know of the rainbow serpent, but we don't get taught that much about the creation myths, if there are myths, here in Australia. But it is kind of fascinating.
Wilpena Pound was the place of dragons. It's where the dragons came out of the mountains. That's what they call Wilpena Pound, the Dragon Mountains.
New Zealand or Australia?
That's Australia.
Okay. Wow, that's
Wilpena Pound is not far from Pine Gap, which is a UFO center. Now, Bruce, you've heard me talk before about the Andes mountain range going all the way into the mountain ranges that go into North America, and that's called the spine of Earth Mother. Now, that spine is connected to the deep oceans, and there's an underground ocean inside that spine, or spinal fluid oceans, which connects the subcrustal, subterranean societies that are there. Now, Wilpena Pound is also connected in a similar way. It's connected to the deep under ocean societies. And wherever there's a large mountain range, there's a large subsurface ocean there.
Wow.
That's very interesting because, here with the Australia Mountains that surround Stardust Ranch, and Stardust Ranch has one of, if not the largest aquifer underneath of it.
Yep. And there's thousands of beings that live in there. Exactly. Now, Pine Gap, as an observatory station, was put there to observe the subterranean, sub-ocean cultures. That's its original purpose.
Yeah, but, it's basically a sort of a CIA joint venture project.
But there's a lot more to it. We'll just simply call it time travel command and control systems are there. So if some external source tries to do negative time travel here, Pine Gap is the first stopgap to preventing it.
See, I always thought that Pine Gap was connected directly with Antarctica.
It is. There's a tunnel that goes direct. And there's tunnels that go to the subterranean, sub-ocean cultures.
Right.
Yeah. Because there's an actual, like the same multidimensional tunnels that lead from Ireland to Egypt or Iceland to Argentina. There's these tunnels that are out of phase of reality, but as soon as you go into them, an hour of walking is like walking 1,000 miles.
Right.
For the listeners at home, if you look at a map of Australia, there's a central city/town called Alice Springs. Pine Gap, I think, is around about 400 kilometres, 200 miles from that. And it's is it dead centre in the landmass, Andrew?
It's dead centre.
Yeah. Which is fascinating. So it's right in the middle of the landmass of Australia. And Australia is bigger than the continental United States. So,
right. And it's also connected directly to London. It's directly connected to Washington, D.C. and to
Tract.
What's the big base that's in Colorado?
Denver Airport.
Yeah.
No. The Air Force Base underground.
Oh,
Delphi.
Brain fart. No. Central Command. Brain fart.
NORAD.
NORAD.
Yeah.
Now, we have to separate what are multidimensional tunnels, real tunnels, and then tunnels made post-50s and 60s that are essentially compressed air tunnels that move trains.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
there's different versions of them. And the tunnels that are at Pine Gap are the main multidimensional tunnels, but there are also other tunnels from other previous groups who created physical tunnels that had other technology that amplified the speed in which people could move through them.
I'm sorry, Andrew, would that be like the tunnel system that's down here beneath Los Angeles that was the lizard people or the Hopi people's tunnel system?
So that's a standard tunnel system, not a multi-dimensional tunnel system. Oh. Something that was actually carved like highways between cities.
We're not talking about the dumbs here.
Yeah.
One of the best names that the Prime Creator came up with. It's a kind of humbling being a comedian in this creation, because sometimes that Prime Creator writes the best jokes. Deep underground military base. Oh, you mean a dumb? Yeah.
So
that's just dumb.
Why aren't we nibbling on the normal news bait line in this roundtable? Because that's what they want you to talk about. That's the distraction. This is the real stuff, folks. The further I go in this game, the more I come to add my voice to the chorus of voices who are saying over and over again, literally everything we believe in this world is a deliberate lie that's been told to us, or an ignorance we can't overcome on our own. And this is why it's fun to elasticize the imagination and think about these things and talk about these things. I say elasticize the imagination, but that doesn't mean that the things we aren't talking about aren't absolutely real. They are absolutely real. We live in a completely Fortean reality, you know, Charles Fort. This is not what you think is going on. And assimilating this information and getting to a consciousness where you can live your life more meaningfully from your priorities is going to make all the difference in how this ride goes, as Bill Hicks said, and Hunter S. Thompson paraphrased after him. Or I got that in reverse. Hunter S. Thompson said it first, and Bill Hicks paraphrased him. It's just a ride, man. But it can be a very meaningful ride in a single lifetime based on where you invest your energy and what you try to do with yourself and your life. And I say these things now because these topics can be a little daunting, right? Especially to people who think they've got everything figured out. And nobody has that mentality more than a journalist. I have a journalism degree. So this journey of book writing has been particularly bruising on my ego. But you just get up, It's like Rocky VII. You just get up. You know what you can and can't do.
So it's not Bruce, how hard you get hit. It's how you move forward. Sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
Bruce, you were calling a Fortean reality. I say it's a Faustian reality.
Yeah, that may be a bit literary for Rev Radio. Faust is Goethe's classic, folks, German medieval literature. The Germans did everything. We just don't hear it anymore because we kind of blackballed them after World War II, but they have their Shakespeare. They have everything, and the Faustian, Goethe is one of the best reads you'll ever do in your life, even in translation to English. So I highly recommend it. And so what Andrew is saying is this is a reality. What are you saying? It's run by the devil?
No, it's run by the negative forces. And the delusion is we think we have free will beyond them. Even though we do, we just have never been taught it. That's why it's a Faustian reality.
Remember, we're ruled by psychopaths and run by idiots. And a psychopath is just a high-functioning idiot. Because, have you seen Monsters, Inc.? I think we're at that moment. I remember Andrew sharing some information where, because there's been, boardroom drama in the inner Earth, where the idea of maybe we should let people enjoy their lives fully, and we can tap into that energy of positivity. And it's like, I just went, that's what happened in Monsters, Inc. Short reminder of Monsters, Inc. The monsters would scare kids to power their society. Then they realized that fear is only a certain amount, but if they made a kid laugh, they would get 10 times as much.
Yeah. Maybe we should define, drill down on this a little bit. So this is a harvesting planet. Energy is harvested. John, Andrew, Noreen, Monty. Obviously, I'm just, as the host, stimulating conversation. I have my own answers to these questions. But what is the energy? And what do they do with our energy?
Your unused intentional energy, because you're in unawareness that you have intentional energy that has the power to shape your reality. And because you're in unawareness, they can take this energy from you to the point where you're virtually a dried up husk with never any power to get beyond being a dried up husk. And never know it.
What do they do with the energy?
Convert it into their own creational energy. A third of it's put back into controlling the system, and the other 2/3 is pure profit.
Okay, there you go. They can run this place with a third of our energy, and 2/3 is sent off world.
Yeah, when I found that out, because I'm not a big fan of business, and then listening to Andrew's information, it's business all the way to the top. I'm like, oh man, I'm in the wrong creation.
Yeah.
Andrew, did we make a contract as souls to come into this kind of situation where we know that they're harvesting us or trying to extrapolate things from us? Is this like we agreed to it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everyone here has agreed to be here. Just because you didn't receive a certified letter to this I am now doesn't mean you didn't agree to it somewhere else.
And Noreen, I asked Andrew, so why did we do this? Because it's fun. And I mumbled. It's extremely fun. But, obviously from a 3D perspective, but the soul, I guess, would be having its high point because it's all experience.
I'm pretty much sure I'm just here for the tobacco and the coffee.
That's how they got me. It'll be catered. Oh, nice.
Yeah,
I'm here for the beer, pizza, and sex.
You go. He's a visitor.
Well,
I got to say something, and that is that I know from my own experience. I was in a horrible accident in 1973. I was killed, and ended up 3 or 4 different times being revived, only to finally wake up in a body bag in the hospital, and come to and go through all sorts of rehabilitation. And it's a very long story, but the bottom line is that I remember being on the other side and saying to myself, gee, I really want to get back there, and not really having too many choices about what vehicle I got to park myself in to go back. And so consequently, I came back in the injured body of the child that was killed in the car accident. But at the same time, I'm an entirely different person. And so, I think the body's a vehicle, but it's not necessarily the end result.
Did you say that you chose to come back?
I absolutely wanted to come back because I believe that I had been robbed of my opportunity to fulfill my purpose. And so, I had to take whatever was available, but there wasn't anything available. So I ended up having to come back in the same broken body, battered body that I left in. And I mean, I literally had, so many, fractured skull, my eyes knocked out of my head, my back, my neck, my right kidney ruptured, broken, my right side crushed from the knee down. It took me 2 years to learn how to walk again. I went through a solid year of electric shock treatment, 3 times a week, where they lifted me up, put me in a metal chair, and stuck it in a tub of water, and then turned on the power from a bunch of batteries.
What? Oh my goodness.
And then
at least you came back. At least you didn't come back in a cow.
There weren't any available.
What would you say to yourself back then? It's like, this is not the high point. I've seen down your time stream. It's going to get interesting.
Everything that I've suffered here on the ranch is nothing compared to what I experienced in 73 through 75. And I think that tempered me physically for everything that happened here at the ranch. And consequently, I got to the point where I could separate my emotional and spiritual and intellectual self from the actual pain that was coursing through my body, to the point where I could differentiate between them. And in doing so, I got to the point where I could understand that if we could learn that self-mastery process, there's no limit to what we can do.
And I think you also meant the perpetrators, the negative perpetrators at Stardust Ranch, and that experience too. So you would understand that you're karmically entangled with them.
Yes.
And the land you're karmically entangled with also.
Yes.
It's why you had the urge to stay with conviction and not go off to the infinite potentialities that could have lured you away like a shiny coin.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, because that's sort of one of the big questions when we find out about you, John, and the story of Stardust Ranch. It's like, you've been there for 2.5 decades. Why? And yeah,
well, I mean, it's the answer is always the same, and that is that I would never sacrifice the animals for a chance to leave. I mean, because people kept saying, well, you could have gotten an apartment and left anytime you wanted to. Well, if I'd done that, I would have lost everything that I invested, all the time, pain, effort, agony, commitment, you name it. And I just wasn't willing to throw that away.
Yeah,
for no reward.
That's sort of the bonus stuff, because you had to be there for the experience. And I think all that you were mentioning, like the animals, and because I know you love animals, you have a small army of them. That is, by them being there, it anchored you there even more.
It did, and I understood that, and it's been very difficult to explain that, but when I get down to that place where you have to face yourself and you have to be honest with yourself, the bottom line is that the animals did nothing to deserve this, and any animal that's within 7 or 8 miles of this ranch, if it gets lost, it gets hungry, it's dying of thirst, it's going to come to this ranch no matter what.
I do remember when I did the interview with you and Bruce, just 3 months after the book came out, the one of the first things I said to you is like, your wife is awesome.
Because she's amazing.
Yeah, because she put up, it's all in the book, but she put up with everything and still stood by you, and it's like, she should get an award like best wife of the century or something. It's just
I know, she reminds me of it daily.
Yeah, I'm sure that's how awesome she is. And by the way, you're here because I'm here, all right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been quite a journey there at Stardust Ranch. Amazing place. I think there's another book there. There's more to tell. There's all kinds of stuff there. I look forward to doing it in 2022, John.
Me as well.
Would you be having? I mean, there's even a side book of the neighbor opposite you. Whoever's been, one of your neighbors that's been there for for 20 years. Just seeing, having their experience of there's all this weird crap that's happening. It'd be interesting to see from a witness point of view, from someone on the outside, but still in the area.
They're all gone. Everybody's gone. About 3 or 4 years ago, we went from having no neighbors to suddenly we were surrounded. And then there's the regular turnover.
Oh, okay.
Half them were probably NSA.
It wouldn't surprise me a bit.
Yeah.
Andrew, I have a question. Speaking of choosing certain kinds of challenges, I discovered, oh my God, that I have Morgellons. I have all the symptoms, the fibers, everything. Did I choose this? Is this like an alien program? When is it? It's very strange.
I'm not the person you want to be talking about that, because I believe Morgellons is a self-created situation from overconsumption of very negative material.
Wow.
And you can easily heal it for yourself by stop looking at the darkness and the darkness that's looking back at you. And Morgellons is a completely mind virus inserted into a system for people that want to be super spiritual but don't have some of the prerequisites of sovereignty all throughout their soul.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Andrew does a call-in show once a fortnight. I just like saying that to upset people because they're like, what? 2 weeks. But there's a running theme usually. I want to make it into a T-shirt, which it's me, isn't it? And most of the problems that we're experiencing, there's an element. What's a better way of saying it, Andrew? Because I was going to say it's our fault. But there's a better way of saying it.
99% of all entities are self-created. They're not external.
Yeah.
So they're self-created demons that take us down the path of losing what our internal voice is. And then the programs, after a while, which become a reflection of you, they think they're the soul, and they regularly try to kick you out of your own body, and then you don't know how to be in your own body.
Hence the term.
Which creates long-term traumas.
Yeah, hence the term, it's me, isn't it? Sorry, John, go ahead.
Would that especially apply to autoimmune situations where people become almost allergic to themselves?
Yes, but there can also be other things in the autoimmune. It can be a genetic defect, which is not kicking the body out of the body. It's the body attacking itself because there's too high frequency of soul in the lineage itself. I have an autoimmune. I have psoriasis that can get very serious, and it can go away very fast. And it's all about maintaining the right frequency to be a normal human being without being super high frequency 24/7, 365.
Which I find
so in other words,
sorry, go ahead.
Moderating the stress.
Well, it's not just that. It's learning to live as a human being who has purpose to live here other than to be a spiritual teacher.
Yeah, there's that element of you can live in the spiritual life, but part of that is actually to be a physical human being and paying your rent and going for a driver's test and stuff like that. It's an interesting
leaving a legacy too.
Yeah,
that I enjoy doing.
Yeah, an interesting a balance of you can't be spiritual because why would you need the body? But the spirit, I love this one. You're not a human having a spiritual experience. You're a spirit having a human experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
Yeah.
And in many situations, autoimmune situations are heightened by a dream world that's organized through our intestinal tract. So our dreaming body lives inside our intestinal tract. And when we go from mind space to heart space into dream space, we enter the intestinal tract and enter the dreaming vehicle, and there can be anything from blood parasites to internal core parasites, or just mucus that has tremendous amounts of negative data from other dream worlds, which can also create a negative autonomic response system. That's why cleansing the gut with anyone that has an autonomic system, like a sickness like that, learning gut health is absolutely vital.
So,
Yeah.
in other words, the purification process, what would you recommend for something like that?
Well, start with a parasite cleanse, Dr. Hulda Clark, and from there do regular colonics. At any given time, most people have about 20 pounds of petrified poop in their system, no matter how clean of an eater they are. It's just the nature of the human body, and especially when a body is stressed with high amounts of anxiety and high amounts of paranoia, you'll store and store and store poop that becomes petrified and embedded in the mucus, which then creates other colonies of gut genomes and microorganisms that are there to normally break down food, but such things as candida overtake. And what candida can do is can become semi-sentient in your body. And what candida will do when it doesn't get its sugars and carbs, it'll produce alcohol in your intestinal tract, so that you are then having a sugar crave and a sugar rush.
Yeah, been there.
So would you say that somebody who is fear-based would be manifesting this on a constant
Absolutely.
basis?
Absolutely.
Okay. Fascinating.
It's me, isn't
Wow. Wow. So I think Revolution Radio would be an excellent spot for an unlicensed gastronomy person to come in and make $1 million. I mean, there's just got to be some really bad intestinal tracts at this radio station. What do you think, Monty and Noreen?
Are you saying people are full of crap?
I was just going to say that everybody's full of shit.
Yeah, including me. I mean, I've got in my comedy's a defensive, and I try and work through that. But I remember having 20 years ago, like I can crap myself better to a better person, and the body has 3 or 4 ways of getting rid of unwanted things, and urine, defecation, sweat, and I can't remember the other one. But yeah, you can crap yourself to a better life.
Yeah, I've been doing that for a couple of years, just releasing a lot of bodily toxins, and I feel lighter and better. So yeah, we all need to do it.
Well, Noreen,
there's a spiritual process to detoxifying the intestinal tract.
Yes.
And a lot of people miss that spiritual process because as you're cleaning the system, you have to reinforce it with positive energy and positive intention. And then there's baby step intention, and then there's adult practitioner intention that fortifies it in such a way that once you are cleansed, you are able to take 10 steps of one tiny step.
And there's also that great meme, life is better after a big poo. And it is. Like, you feel lighter and you've got rid of all this junk.
How many people have taken a big old poo and had bounce back in their step? We've all had that happen. Like, wow. Okay, you just crapped out some negative energies. I tell people when they're doing these colon cleanses and stuff, after a while, metaphorically, you're going to shit out something that's like a dead octopus. And what it is all of this negative energies and entities that have been using and abusing you.
Yeah, I actually had my body decided to have a fast. I think the higher self's gone, just get out of the way. And for about a week, I didn't eat food. And black putty was coming out. And so my body had a forced cleanse. Which was fascinating. It's like, oh, okay. I didn't freak out because when you have a newborn baby, apparently multiple colours come out of those things, children. But yeah, it was fascinating that I didn't eat for almost a week, or I just nibbled, and the colon's gone. Yeah, well, I don't know if it was a complete flush, but it was meant to be, and it did the trick.
Yeah. I started doing Stanley Burroughs Master Cleanse in 2003, and I do it at least once a year, sometimes twice, for the full 11 days. And the very first time you do it, it's unbelievable what comes out of you. And it's unbelievable the change in your psychological state. It's so, physiological, your mental state, how it changes, and just the clarity and lightness you feel. I recommend it to everybody. The intestinal tract is a huge part of our overall well-being. Where are we going now, folks? What do we want to talk about now? We want to touch on this scary political, social, economic situation and back ourselves up a little bit, or just keep it going free flow? I'll
just share one thing which we could probably just discard to the side, but Stephen Crowder from Ladder with Crowder is suing YouTube because of they're trying to push him off his platform. So in the battle with big tech, that'll be fascinating to see how that unfolds.
He's pretty innocuous. Why would they be going after him?
Because he's popular. He gets better ratings on YouTube compared to Colbert, that Git from the Daily Show, NBC, CNN. He gets more numbers than the mainstream media, and they get him on anything, and they're very vague at pulling him down, and because it's that we disagree with you, so we're going to remove you type thing.
Yeah.
And it's a comedy show, so.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Let's talk for a moment about generations, and how human behavior and human outlook on a reality can change, so dramatically in 2 or 3 generations. If you go from the baby boomers to the millennials, anybody have any thoughts on that? What's going on with that, Noreen? Do you have any ideas about that, John?
Well, I would say personally that the longer we go on, like if you go back to like the 60s and 70s, if you didn't have some kind of a point of view where you were going to see yourself as part of the just the landscape of making the world a better place and trying to do something that was really meaningful, and you dedicated part of your life to that, you were seen as being sort of superficial. And into the 80s, gradually with the dedication to acquisition of wealth, it became okay to be that way. And I think it's just gotten worse and worse over the decades. And I'm not trying to say that a realistic point of view was established in the 60s and 70s that we were all going to change the world. But I think, for those of us that really decided that we were going to try to do something, we've lived our whole lives that way, and there has to be something good that goes with that.
I've got something to add to that. Because of the nature of how technology was implemented in the last 3 generations, part of the sub-project is they're trying to amalgamate all the generations into one set of common thoughts and ideas, which has never been done in the last 150 generations of the modern organic society as being run by the global narrative. And when they get a homogenous single generation point of view, even though there will still be separations of class, culture, nation prides, and patriots, those separations are far easier manageable than the generational gaps that are there. Thus, technology is there to close the generational gaps where you can't tell the difference between a boomer and a millennial because of the technologies linking them all together.
That's a very good point. Very good point. Yeah, I think the only way you could tell is if you gave most of us that are boomers a test. We would certainly, pretty much most of us would fail.
Well,
no, where the test starts, where were you when Kennedy died? Where were you when 9/11 happened?
Yep.
A boomer's going to go have both.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or Generation Z, you hand them a rotary phone and they wonder what it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. Very true.
I've seen a photo of that 2 kids looking at a phone box which has got a dial-up thing, and they're like, well, how do you use this? Like, yeah, well, you got to use your finger, and that's why I like when Bruce mentions I'm changing the Wi-Fi password on where I live, and you can just do that. If you've got kids, do that and just hear the screams.
Yeah.
Now, something else I want to add about the generations. Every generation tries to outdo the generation before it, and every generation tries to reinterpret the previous generation's way of they tried to outperform the generation before that, and it's a vicious cycle that has to be broken.
Well, yeah, young kids telling boomers, oh, it's your fault the planet's like this. It's like, well, when we were kids, it's still the same control structure that are holding us down. So it's not, I mean, it could be our fault.
Well, something else, and that is that we were all taught right from wrong. We were all taught about values. We were taught about, manifestations of all these various different things. And for most of us, we've learned to hold those things dear, the patriotism, et cetera. And, in this day and age, it's gotten to the point where it just seems like nobody seems to care too much about it. And because I can sit down and talk to younger people, they might be able to hold conversation with me about some of these things. But when you ask them if they've ever sat down and really examined it and thought about how it affects their lives and how they should make changes in their lives in order to, really do something with it, they can't even hold a conversation.
Right, because they were never taught true civics and true sociology in school raising up. Like civics and sociology was taken out of school in the late 70s.
Yep, exactly. Well, it's like gym class being taken out, and look what happened to everybody.
Yeah, the same thing happened here in Australia in 1970. I'm going to say 76, but the end of 75, the Constitution. By the way, Australia has a constitution where the Governor General, who's the representative of the Queen, can sack the Parliament and call for another election. And it's famous that Gough Whitlam basically got sacked, and there was a election, and blah blah blah. If it resonates with you, or however you say it, check it out. The CIA is involved because 5 years later they said no, that was us. However, the way that the educational system dealt with that is they stopped teaching kids that Australia has a constitution. The constitution didn't change because there was a crisis at the top end, but they just stopped teaching kids that there was. I only found out there was a constitution by doing research for myself. I was never taught it in school.
Well, and I think that's why they work so hard to rewrite history. I mean, we're seeing this left and right, here in the States. I mean, they're constantly going in and changing everything in the books so that nobody has any idea about what the truth is.
You can see it.
And
go ahead, Andrew.
And the reason why here in the United States nothing can be changed via law is because they stopped teaching equity as a form of law in 1972.
Right.
Now there are still courts of equity that can put an injunction, and that's what the power of a court of equity is. It has the injunctive power to stop anything from a president to a CEO of anything and stop them from doing their actions.
Well, Andrew, think about it. Most people don't know how powerful a sheriff is.
Correct.
And they have no clue at all. And really, the country is almost practically run by the sheriffs,
who have given their power to the feds.
The thing about the sheriffs, though, is I think right now the sheriffs are important because the police they have more pressure on them as to what to do, how to behave, in this climate. The sheriffs have their own authority. And I think that's important, like you were talking about that. Getting back really quickly to the thing about the generations, I think the purposeful thing is to vacate a young person's mind so that they can just indoctrinate them. That's part of the curriculum. But also, I noticed that because we have so much more technology now, that young people, they're inundated with so much because of electronics and stuff that they can't even sift through information the way that we did. That's how I kind of see it. So this is why the brain takes in information a little bit differently and processes it too differently, I think.
I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see the rewriting of history, which is so 1984, the book, not the year, well, maybe the year as well, in the entertainment industry, because if you're familiar with the movie Black Panther, spoiler alert, there's no panthers in Africa, so I'm just ruining it there. However, Marvel said, it's the first black superhero, and it's like, you made 3 films about Blade 20 years ago. And so they're forgetting their own history just on an entertainment thing. So who knows what else has been doing. And you've seen the current president say, I did all this. And it's like, well, the former president started half of that. And yeah, what is satire and parody now? You have to check everything to see, no, is this satire or parody? No, they mean it. Oh, dear God, no.
I got a Snopes fact-checked Monty right here live on air. In fact, folks, there's no such thing as a panther altogether. It's a mutation in a jaguar. If you roll them over and rub their bellies, you'll see the panther, the jaguar dots and everything, right? Mm-hmm. So it is just a genetic mutation that happens in the jaguar class. Why they called it a panther and make everybody think there's this big cat that exists in the genus is I don't understand. Now, I didn't understand. I didn't know till I got here. But yeah. Monty, I caught you.
No, thank you. It's probably the first time that I've been fact checked, and it benefited me because it reinforced my point.
Yeah, there are definitely no jaguars in Africa.
Oh, they've got them here. They've got them here in the United States.
They could walk there. I've seen them. They could walk there. Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm serious. I mean, I used to spend a lot of time in Oklahoma due to family member Tucklow. And, we used to go out and go see various Bigfoot and all sorts of things. But the Black Panthers are absolutely in Oklahoma.
There's a myth here in Victoria, there's one or two, and I think Tasmania as well, that they see a big cat, but no one can get a good photo of it, so it's just like in hushed tones of, oh, there's a big cat out there. But, we have the space for it, but I don't know if it's there or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I just have a little bit of advice for you kids at home. If you have three female cats, neuter them. And I'll leave it at that.
That's when I got my cat. It's like, oh, can you look after this cat? Yeah, de-sex her. I want to look after one cat. I don't want to start a lineage. I don't want to raise an army.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have so many kittens here now that, but the litters aren't big. One was 2, one was 1, and one was 3. And 2 I've given away from the first litter. And I just swap out the 2 lactating mothers now to feed the whole litter to give, the mothers a break. And they get into this whole kibbutz raising of the kittens. It's kind of fascinating. I was telling Andrew about that today. I didn't figure this out. My wife taught me this. I said, you put all the kittens in one blue recycling box. How are both mothers going to get in there and feed? She says, you idiot, one cat will feed all of them. One of the litters was only one cat. And it's just one of those almost daily smack the forehead events up here with my wife educating me on how the real world works. It's just amazing. So, yeah. I got a lot of cats here. I've gotten quite used to them. They're very useful here, though. They serve a function. And when things serve a function, everything's in its right place. Even your animals relate to you differently because they know they serve a function. They know they have an equitable relationship with you.
And that is very true. Very true. I see that all the time with the horses here.
With that being said, hold on one second. With that being said, how did the 5 major religions serve a function here? When in fact, none of them have been reformed and none of them are doing anything truly beneficial to get us out of this nature of the trap society we're in.
They're all distraction as far as I'm concerned.
Well, they're more than distraction. They're a part of the infrastructure of control.
Oh, what a great topic for the last 20 minutes of this roundtable. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, this is another big thing. I was raised a Catholic. Now, I moved away from it fairly young. But even the Eastern stuff, a lot of it is polluted now. If you're going to get out of this, it's going to be sheer will, and you're going to come up with some kind of hybrid path from about, anywhere from 8 to 40 different things you study, from Santeria to Islam to meditation, and you got to put it all together, some diet and all kinds of stuff, and finally you'll get a formula that works for you. But if you just sign on the dotted line, and I don't mean to pick on any one particular class of religions, but especially these Abrahamic afterlife insurance policies, and that's really all they are when you think about it. It stops you from thinking about what you are spiritually, what your spiritual is. Oh, I'm covered. I'm covered. Ironically or just coincidentally, I was going to watch a movie after this roundtable. I go to bed about 4 a.m. these days, my time. And I downloaded 1990 State of Grace with Sean Penn and Gary Oldman and Ed Harris, and very Irish Catholic thing. You look at these, and why are there so many organized crime groups coming out of Catholic culture? How did the Prince of Peace produce all of this? Riddle me that, right? Anyways, don't get me started. But religions are a big part of what we're going through now, right? Because there's just so much tension in the world now with these religions all over the world. Nobody is exempt, not even India.
Their lack of self-reform is fast making them irrelevant to the greater growth of humanity.
Exactly. I was just going to say that.
Yeah. I want to say for myself, Bruce, I reflect what you're saying. I become more like pan-religious, if you want to say, like incorporating different spiritual practices into my life and not over-focusing on one or the other. I feel more balanced that way, and I think a lot of people kind of feel the same. That's what I sense.
Well, speaking for, I think, at least 50% of the hosts at this radio station, I'm getting really fed up with some of the hardline etched in stone dogmatic bullshit I'm hearing at this radio station. And we've got hosts here talking about the lake of fire and an eternal hell and judgment, and they're so fixated on a misinterpretation of whatever the hell the book of Revelation is, that whether they realize it or not, their deepest unconscious prayer is, hurry up and destroy the world, God, or I'm going to stop believing in you. And that intentional energy is going out and feeding things. It may not destroy the world, but it's going to light fires.
Yep,
it's extremely destructive. Extremely
perfect explanation, Bruce. All that negative, low frequency energy goes out and scares the bejesus out of everybody, and then they turn around and vibrate it all back, and then they harvest whatever they have cast out there on the water.
But many of those organizations are becoming metaphorical cannibals, feeding on their own fear energy because their numbers are dwindling. Now, many people think, oh, it's not dwindling. No, people aren't going to church anymore. You look at the numbers overall, they're not going. They're not falling for the Westboro Baptist Church lines anymore. They're not falling for, the different sects and groups that are out there that say it's my way is the only way. Anyone who says there's only one way, guess what? You're wrong. There's an infinite amount of ways to do everything.
Yeah. Variety is a big thing that we haven't explored in this life experience.
Absolutes are the way of the Sith, to quote Star Wars. And whenever anybody is in an absolute state of being, that's being a zealot and a martyr to their individuated cause.
And also with all that is, was, and will be, as David Icke says, the prime creator, source energy. You're telling me there's only one way. Like, you miss out on so. It's like I've had conversations about past lives. It's like, well, I've learned everything in this life. Have you, sir? Have you given birth? Have you had that experience? No. So, you're limiting the kaleidoscope of creation, and there is so much more. What we know, we don't know what we do. We know what we don't know, but there's so much we don't know that we don't know.
Well, that's something very interesting that you bring up there, and that is that probably one of the most important things that anybody can do these days is be open-minded enough to be able to at least say that something that they haven't experienced might have some value in it, and to be open-minded enough. They don't have to even try it. All they have to do is not deny it to somebody else to have it.
Yeah,
exactly.
There's that thing of. I've got a couple of friends who are Christians. It's like, that's awesome. That's not for me, but it's for you. You do you, and that's, how do I describe it? Like, we're co-creating this. I'm the center of my universe. You're the center of your universe, and we're co-creating through the joy of creation. We can intermingle. I don't have to be a Tibetan monk. I can just meet one and find out their perspective and learn from them from their perspective.
Exactly.
And like, I don't want to go through what John's gone through, but I'm glad I know John, or I know of John's story, which sort of reinforces I don't want to go through it, but I know about it, and
so,
it's.
I didn't want to go through it.
I know. Well, or maybe you did. Go ahead, Andrew.
I want to touch on the concept that the five major religions are making themselves irrelevant by not allowing reform, and no matter what of the five major religions, they're purposely not allowing any form of natural reform. Now, when the Catholics switched to the Protestants, they had wars, etc., over reform itself. And since that time, reform has been considered, this vile energy that will change the fundamentals of the religion, when in fact it doesn't change the fundamental. It just stops the reproduction of the same dogmas that keep people dumbed down. And church has its own value of making itself irrelevant because many people go out of tradition and not out of faith. And that's something that's long been prevalent in all the major religions. They do it out of tradition and not out of the faith. There's so many people that put on their good Sunday clothes and go to church once a month because they're going to meet the friends and family that they only see at church once a month.
Yeah, there's that.
And therefore, it's not a practiced religion, and the reform has to reflect why people are coming and why they're not coming. Okay, all of the major religions, not to pick on any one, they all have the same issue.
Well, that's a very good point. I mean, if we look back at education, if we went back and looked at the education that was being taught, 250 years ago, And we would say, well, most of this, or a great deal of it, is not only incorrect, but it's not even relevant anymore. If we did the same thing with religion and we looked at religion, we would just say, oh my God, why have we been doing this? We've been doing it out of fear and reverence, but there was never any sense in it.
Like the Mormons have their magic underwear, quite literally, in their teaching, magic underwear. Yeah. Okay, that should have been reformed out of their teachings a long time ago, but it hasn't. Okay, the same thing with, not to pick on the Catholics, but there's a lot of holes you can poke in. Like, why did Enoch go there, or why did he marry? Who are the mud people? So many of those things that could have been done via reform.
Exactly.
So, I have a question. What's with the text discoveries and stuff like that, like the Nag Hammadi and the Dead Sea Scrolls? Is that just a scam to keep the religions going, or are those things really happening in the timeline?
Okay, so the Dead Sea Scrolls are a real object, something that has been researched, but it has been absolutely bastardized in what they're telling us the meaning is. There's a reason they've never released the entire text, because it would throw religion on its hind end. Okay, and the major Christian religions would have a lot of splaining to do, just like a I Love Lucy episode.
Mm-hmm.
Church, you have lots of splaining to do. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and see, that's the whole thing. All the motivation in so many of these things, science, religion, literature, you name it, everything is on behalf of the person providing, the actual text, and what their motivation is, what their knowledge is, what their education is, and what their ability to express what the value of it is. And unfortunately, it's all skewed. And it's not just skewed according to what we know now. It's been skewed since the very beginning.
Absolutely. Therefore, the fundamental teachings of all five main religions have been been so skewed that, and by not allowing reform, unfortunately, you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater to get back to faith.
Exactly. So well said.
Yeah, if people ask me if I'm religious, I tell them a Jedi, because I pick the one with the better merchandising.
Well,
the uniforms are easier to keep clean.
Oh yes, and a lightsaber. I own two. It's awesome. You should come over and we'll have a battle.
Yeah. The sad truth of what you're joking about there, Monty, is there's probably more spiritual truth in the first 3 Star Wars movies than in a decade of going to Catholic Mass.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I keep returning to the teachings of Yoda in Empire Strikes Back, where I think it's a mixture of Christian and Buddhist teachings, but George Lucas, it's mainly psychological and the hero's journey. But just watch all the Yoda scenes again, and it's fascinating how he explains. It's called the Force, but you are the Force. You don't have to sort of tap into it. But we're not these bodies. We're luminous beings, not this crude matter and all this other stuff. And I'm going to watch that after I finish this show. I'm going to watch. A 3-foot green puppet tells me more than the Reverend does.
If we had a way of being able to look at our reality through the various different dimensions, and being able to take from that, the truth and the understanding and the insight. Imagine how fast we could emerge from this time of great doubt, great change. And I guess what I'm saying is that I'm reluctant to want to do all the work that's going to be required in order for us to advance naturally. But at the same time, it's so painful to watch the world go through what it's going through.
For me, yeah. I apply free will, which I don't know if I'm avoiding, but it's more of, people choose, like the whole vaccine, half my family wants to get it. It's like, well, you do you. I'll be here in the fallout. But that's, for me, that's the thing of free will. And I don't know if it's a cop-out sometimes, but that's how I'm evolving slowly. We're
winding up here, getting down to the end. I have a fiduciary duty to the nonprofit. This is Revolution Radio, folks, Studio A. We're an entirely nonprofit, listener-supported platform, and we'd love you to be a part of that if you're so inclined and capable of doing. Any donation is fine, $5. Please go to freedomslips.com or revolution.radio, hit the donate button, and the rest will be explained to you. And with that said, we'll just go to final words. I'll start with you, Noreen.
Oh yeah, this kind of segues into something I want to announce really quick. This is directed to Andrew and any of you on here. I have a show preceding this time slot called Wild at Heart. Now here's the thing, I do strictly interview shows. I mean, I do roundtables, but I also do interview shows where I'm focusing on you, the guest, and if you don't want callers or any interference, fine, I can switch formats to that easily. So, whatever you guys like or feel like, let me know. And, that's extended to all of you. But, Bruce, I need to talk to you about your book, too, right? So, whatever. We can have, no callers. You just focus on your whole narrative. That, whatever. Same thing with Andrew or, your friend here. And Monty, too. I haven't talked to you in a while. So, anyway, I'm just extending that invitation.
I'm going to drop the server. Stay on the line for a moment, please, John.